So I've told how the ministry came to be, right? As the publishing director, my canvassers were coming back with stacks and stacks of the cards that I showed you yesterday, these guys. Now, this is a stack of roughly 60. Imagine a stack of 380 that just sat there for at least 18 months. And I was just begging, please, please let me follow up with them. No, that's not your job. So that made me nuts. And I asked the Lord how we could take the information that the folks give us at the door, because, we give them opportunity to say that they would like to see the following community works projects in their area. And on the list here, we have healthful living workshops, natural remedies and disease prevention or management, vegetarian cooking workshops, depression recovery programs, grief support, addiction recovery, parenting workshops, and character building programs for youth. And of that stack of 300 plus cards that sat on the desk for 18 months, 90 to 95% of them, just looking at the raw data, 90 to 95% of the people who had filled those cards out expressed a combination of depression and addiction, one or the other, or a combination of the two. So the vast majority of the people were openly and readily saying, we need this. And so I, in prayer, asking the Lord how to develop a follow-up system that wasn't a reinventing of the wheel, right? Because John Bradshaw owns his area, and Sean Boonstra owns his, and Doug Batchelor, and on and on. And there's really no reason to try to reinvent that, because they've got it down to a science, and what they do is incredible. But where's the pre-work? Where's the work that leads up to that larger evangelistic thrust that walks people through the doctrinal understanding of the truth, right? The foundational beliefs of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. But where is the foundational relationship building process with Jesus, who is the centrality of all of those doctrines to begin with, right? So that's where the freedom from depression, freedom from addiction, free to be healthy and happy, and freedom from worry, guilt, and fear came from. I was taking a walk, and I was complaining to God, and I'm like, what do I do? What are we supposed to do? And he says, well, what about steps to Christ? And I'm like, oh, God, that's genius. I don't know. Do you ever congratulate God for his genius? Because I do all the time. And so I started looking at deconstructing steps to Christ from the perspective of a recovering addict, from the perspective of someone who's been in the trenches of depression and really wrestled with literally wanting to die, not just being hopeless. Hopelessness is one step, but grappling with the I don't want to live anymore. And those are the dregs. That's the depths of it. And I've been there. Lived there for a while. And deconstructing steps to Christ from the perspective of people like my little sister, who her mind is completely fried from years and years and years of drug use and self-abuse and, the effects of either hereditary or cultivated mental illness, regardless of what it is. And the Lord put me in touch with a just wealth of professionals in a variety of backgrounds: medical, mental health, first responders, police, people in active addiction. I guess the most poignant information that I got, aside from the scientific data points, was the information, the insider information, if you will, that I got from folks who were in active addiction. And what they said would have spoken to them in their, because they'll be brutally honest with you. You know, if you tell them, listen, this is what I'm trying to do. I want to help people in this way. How would you respond if you were to be met with a program such as this? And my ex-brother-in-law, hey boy, he was really helpful in the just straightforward information that he gave. And he said, well, sis, you need to cut the crap. And I said, well, what crap are you talking about? And he said, you know, a lot of the faith-based programs, and he'd been through just about all of them, from Celebrate Recovery to Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and on and on. He said that they want to deal primarily with stopping using drugs, or stopping drinking alcohol, or stop looking at pornography, or whatever the addiction is. Stop going to the casino, stop buying scratch-off tickets, whatever it is. He said their focus is stopping. I can stop anything. That just makes me a quitter. And I'm like, well, I mean, okay. He said, but, and he's from Eastern Kentucky, Pike County, Kentucky, so he speaks fluent hillbilly. And Pike County is really impoverished and absolutely riddled with addiction and depression. And they're also a deeply prideful community that has deep roots in what we would call Pentecostal or evangelical Christianity. So they have a mix. And, you know, you could walk into any bar in that region and any one of them can talk to you very fluently about the writings of the Apostle Paul. Every one of them were raised on it. And he said that until there is something that introduces people to the person of Jesus, you can quit everything you want to quit, and you're still just a quitter. And for many of us, and he was talking from the perspective of an addict, and many of us, we don't want to be a quitter. We either want to die, and we're actively trying to die, or we just want to numb the pain. So when you're putting your stuff together, just cut the crap. And don't try to show people how to be quitters. Show them how to live it. And if you show them how to live it, then I feel like you'll be successful. And this is, I mean, Fran he's pretty straightforward, if nothing else. So the introduction here, your first page in your little folder. It is a series, this evangelistic tool is a series of educational workshops, and it was born out of that need to reach those struggling in the cycle of depression, the numerous manifestations of addiction and lifestyle disease and illness, to bring them the combined ministry of healing with the gospel of salvation. That quote from the ministry of healing, and I'm paraphrasing, but she says that Christ mingled among men as one who desired their good. He gained their trust, and then he bade them follow me. And oftentimes, we want to put the cart before the horse. You know, we see Jesus walking through next to the Sea of Galilee, and we see him looking over to the sons of Zebedee and saying, "Follow me," and they dropped their nets and followed him. What we don't see behind the scenes is that the sons of Zebedee, they were faithful Jewish men. They were looking for the coming Messiah. They already had a foundation of faith. They had listened to and heard the preachings of John the Baptist. And so when they saw Jesus, they recognized him for who he was. And then their faith was proven correct, right? But we go out into the world and we're like, hey, follow Jesus. And the people that hear us are like, well, why? What has Jesus ever done for me? You know, the young man, I shared the story about Joshua. He's, knocked on his door. He was high as a bird. And he was angry at God because God let his mother suffer and die with cancer. So in the mind of this young addict, what has God ever done for me? He left me with an abusive stepfather who used to beat me every week and force me to go to church. God's not in that church. So the whole point of these programs is to introduce people to Jesus in a very practical and real way. We talk about, and I'm really kind of frustrated at my print company because we would have our workbooks today, but we don't. Yes, we go through the disclaimer. This is for educational purposes only. Nobody wants to get sued, right, Pastor? We're not trying to put the church in a position of liability. But I'm down here in paragraph 3. The programs are not designed as standalone programs, but they could be. It's designed to be a hand in hand. So you have the freedom from depression and the freedom from addiction, the freedom to choose health and happiness, which is basically lifestyle disease reversal, management and reversal. They're not designed to be standalone, but they totally could be if they had to be. The workshops build upon the principles presented in each preceding presentation and series. New information that most participants have never heard or considered is presented in the context of the biblical principles of healing and hope. Therefore, reinforcement of the materials presented is highly beneficial for those trapped in the cycle of illness and disease, depression and/or anxiety, addiction in its numerous forms, and spiritual uncertainty and even darkness. We highly encourage you to make the recommended books and class materials available to supplement the information presented in the seminars and workshops, and those basically are provided by the ministry. So you have the Steps to Christ booklet, and I have cases of those that I'll be dropping off. Safety is important, and we want to encourage all participants to see their doctor before implementing the principles outlined, especially in the Free to Be Healthy and Happy workshops. It's imperative to reiterate the importance of open and ongoing communication between participants and their care providers. Encourage them to check their blood sugar regularly, especially those who are coming to the health and wellness presentations, because you're a nurse, right? What's going to happen if somebody who's been on that deep-fried Twinkie diet suddenly switches and starts eating fresh vegetables and all the good things instead of deep-fried Twinkies? And they're still taking, you know,
They're gonna have to cut their metformin or their insulin dosing down because they're probably gonna drop their sugars.
the natural outworking of it is that their blood sugars, their leptin levels, all of those levels are going to balance out. It's just the natural outworking of it. It's the way God designed the human machine. So we want to encourage people, especially those who are coming to the General Health and Wellness series, to make sure, especially if they're under a doctor's care, make sure they stay under that doctor's care. And for folks who are coming to the depression program specifically, if they're on any kind of medication for generalized anxiety disorder or mood stabilizers or anything of the sort, the same goes. Because when you increase your tryptophan by eating pumpkin seeds, well, the chemicals that are going to be produced, the hormones that are going to be produced and trigger the chemical reactions in the brain are going to directly affect those medications as well. So we want to make sure that everybody that's participating, if they are under a doctor's care, that they pay attention to what's going on, because the health principles are going to make changes physiologically and as a direct result, you know, medicinally as well. We all, go ahead.
From a medical perspective, as people, we're doing those programs, we're gonna wanna know some baseline information about them to at least advise them to pursue that, because if somebody is taking an antipsychotic or some sort of medication that needs to then be adjusted downward, you can't quit some of these things cold turkey because it's gonna create all kinds of problems. So do we need to know that in advance, because, or do we just put that up front, say you need to manage your own health care, we're gonna teach you principles?
We have to let them know that up front. We can't manage their health care because we're not their health care provider. And we make it known at the beginning of every single presentation, almost to an annoying degree, that we are not establishing a medical relationship between volunteers, presenters, sponsoring organizations, and participants. So we do let them know that, listen, if you're on any medication, I don't care if you take an aspirin a day and you're incorporating the health principles that we're sharing, and it doesn't matter if it's from an addiction perspective, depression, or diabetes, please, please, please pay close attention to your body, pay close attention to the advice of your physician, and we also give them, and I get into it here, but we also provide them with a letter to their physician. It's, "Dear physician, this is what we're doing, and I'm going to participate in this program, and I'm just giving you a heads up." And so we encourage them to keep that open line of communication with their healthcare provider for that reason specifically, because you can't just quit an antipsychotic cold turkey, because what does it do? What makes you psychotic? And I mean, it's the truth. I mean, it'll send a person into a tailspin that could be disastrous. And nobody wants to deal with that. Yeah. So what is the program structure? Well, wait, let me back up. We always acknowledge God at the onset of every presentation, not in a beat him over your head, invasive kind of way, but we do acknowledge that we are coming from the biblical perspective. This is a faith-based program, and we want everybody to be comfortable here, and we're not trying to push any belief system on you per se, but you need to know that this is a faith-based program, okay? Stephen and Karen Wickham were the ones who authored the Free to Be Healthy and Happy, authored the program on which the Free to Be Healthy and Happy programs are based. And their work in Appalachia has been integral in creating a health program that's not out of reach for just everyday folks. They developed a program in Grundy County, Tennessee, which is one of the poorest counties in the nation. And they saw tremendous success because the principles that they shared and the information that they gave was able to be immediately implemented by the poorest of the poor. And so it's not a program that requires, an expensive outlay of equipment or, specialty foods. Oftentimes, and I have attended many health programs where, the specialty food list is it's just not attainable. And especially when you're talking to a lady who's on a fixed income of $618 a month. And so, if she can't buy her groceries at Walmart, then it's not going to work for her. So they developed a program that was specifically geared toward the poorest of the poor. And if the poorest of the poor can afford it and implement it and see success with it, then those who are not among the poorer classes will be able to, to reap those benefits as well. So the program structure is this. The Freedom from Depression and Freedom from Addiction are each six-week series designed to be presented in perpetual alternating cycle with a 2-week break between the start of each series. And recommended days based on studies that show when folks attend meetings such as that is Mondays between 6 and 8 p.m. So why do you think it needs to be on that perpetual rotating cycle? Well, sure. So it's easy to remember. You want to establish a habit within the community. They know that the programs are here on Mondays, Is addiction a go through the 6 weeks program and then poof, you're done?
Well, particularly that one's probably one of the longer ones you're going to have to be involved with. Some of the other things, lifestyle changes take at least that much time before it starts to become part of your nature, and then maybe having it reinforced to make sure it sticks. It takes a while to develop healthy habit, permanence in someone's life.
Absolutely. And then also you have have you ever read a passage of scripture? And then the next time you go to that verse, you're like, I don't remember reading that. But you know that you did because it's underlined and you got some margin notes. Every time you hear the information, you'll hear something new. You'll hear something that directly applies to where you are in that moment. And so repeating the information gives people the opportunity to gain the most from it. And it doesn't matter if it's, within the church body or out in the community. But, out in the community, you might have a family, and I've had this happen, you might have a family that knows that these programs are going on, and they've been trying to get their life together so that they can be there. I want to be there on Monday evening no matter what happens. Well, then the transmission goes out on the car because, Murphy's Law applies. And what if that person, that family, they show up and you've canceled that week? They'll never come back. So consistency is key. Even if there are only 3 of you who you've got the presenter, you've got somebody kind of watching the door to receive guests, and then you've got another person that's there for, group discussion facilitation. Even if it's just the 3 of you and nobody else shows up, go through the material. Practice on each other. Ask what's standing out to you. Ask, maybe we could say this a little differently. Maybe we could tweak this a little bit and make it more applicable to our our immediate community. Even if you're the only ones that are there that night, still go through the presentation, still go through the entire process. And in doing so, you're preparing yourself for next week when people will come. God will bless dedicated, faithful efforts. He will, because he's merciful for no other reason. And we have to, these programs need to be bathed in prayer. Absolutely saturated in prayer. I recommend your church group, whomever your core group is, I mean, I think I'm looking at it, whoever your core group is, having, a 15, 20-minute daily prayer call, whatever time of day that's convenient for you. Maybe 2 of you will hop on one day, maybe all of you will be on that day. But every single day, maybe not Sabbath because you're going to be together anyway, but even on Sabbath, after church, meet over in the corner and pray for, just a few minutes for the programs themselves, for the people who have been coming, for the people who will come. And as we bathe it in prayer, the Lord will absolutely bless it. The Free to Be Healthy and Happy is 6 weeks workshop designed to be repeated twice yearly. And that's recommended to take place on Sunday afternoons. 4 to 6 is a good time slot. This is happening at the same time that the Monday meetings are happening. So during the 6 weeks of the Free to Be Healthy and Happy series, you'll also be having the Monday meetings. Okay? It's going to be important that you recruit help because it's an undertaking. It's a dedication. It's basically a new ministry within the church. You have women's ministries, men's ministries, children's ministries, health ministries, and Free Indeed. It truly is a cultural aspect of the church. It becomes a living, breathing part of the church, okay? And then Freedom from Worry, Guilt, and Fear is your culminating series. It's a 12-part full evangelistic series designed to follow the health and wellness-focused presentations to complete that cycle. Scheduling would be varied based on your church territory, what your timeline is, what you're trying to accomplish, okay? So, of course, we have to get approval from the church board and build a team. So the role of the volunteers that are needed to successfully sponsor the Free Indeed cycle of health and wellness evangelism is you're going to need a primary coordinator. Now, this is the person who's going to schedule your volunteers, order materials, organizes printed materials such as handouts, supplemental items, secures any necessary venues. If there's a flood in the basement, make sure the meetings are moved up upstairs. You bring your canoe, your inflatable raft. Maintain records of participants. Why is it important to maintain records of your participants? Absolutely. You want to follow up with them. You want to be able to follow up with them and maintain communication with them so that if you have additional programs, maybe that aren't associated with Free Indeed, you can invite them to those programs. You're having a Christmas cantata or, Resurrection Weekend, you're having a special service or whatever, then that would be good. Hold on, I have to text my employee real quick. Oh, the joys of small business ownership. Is today the 8th? It is. All right. So within that maintain records of the participants, we have a pretty complete registration form that's also in your package you'll be able to see here. All right, let me, da-da-da. And you're also going to help with check-in stations as needed and kind of float around and, you know, help in any area that might be understaffed for that evening. And the primary coordinator is going to assist with marketing and public relations as well. So primarily what I'm going to be doing is social media marketing, digital marketing, those types of things, targeting your specific zip code and the area around the church so that we can maximize, you know, social media marketing. You all have your own online presence. You have your, I'm assuming you have your YouTube channel, you have your Facebook and Twitter and all of those things, right? Right. So whoever is overseeing those aspects of the church's online presence, we want to make sure that this primary coordinator is going to work closely with that person to make sure that all of the upcoming events are posted and, you know, really just promoted on your personal pages. Public relations. That person's going to contact local news, media, newspapers with press releases, and all of those are included in the materials templates. Maintain social media posts regarding programs. Now, our registration staff, 2 friendly people. Friendly people. Do we want to put our dear brothers or sisters who are dipped in vinegar at the front door? I mean, seriously. I went into a church one time. It was not in the Oregon conference, but I went into a church one time, and I'm here to tell you the grouchiest person in the world was greeter that Sabbath. And I don't know if they were just having an off Sabbath or what was going on, but it was almost like, oh, okay, no thanks. I'll go across town, you know. So we want to put somebody friendly, welcoming, but not somebody that's, you know, like all up in your face and invasive. Do we know the difference between friendly and invasive? Sometimes, you know, it can be a special challenge. So the exercise leader here, I know that might sound intimidating, but when we talk about high intensity interval training, we're not talking about, you know, doing CrossFit. Literally, it's jumping jacks for 30 seconds, followed by walking in place for 2 minutes. It's really nothing crazy. It's nothing that should cause, you know, somebody to stroke out in the middle of it. We don't want that. Please no. Please no. Our food service coordinator and support staff, as many as needed based on the number of registrations. Now this is specific to the Free to Be Healthy and Happy because the Free to Be Healthy and Happy series is different than any other health and wellness program that I've ever seen. I wanted, when I was putting this together, I wanted it to be fun and fully interactive. So how many people here have ever seen like a food competition on like the Food Network or whatever?
Sadly, my wife makes me watch.
Listen, it's not against your will. I just firmly believe that you're rooting for the blue team just like I am. But the folks on those teams, they're having fun. You know, it's fully and completely interactive. So the Free to Be Healthy and Happy series, they come in and they have their number on their name badge and they're assigned to a team. So this team is going to create this dish. That team is going to create that dish, so on and so forth. Then we're going to come together, fellowship meal style, enjoy the food that they've created to show them that it's not scary to cook healthy, that it's not above and beyond anything that they're capable of, and that the ingredients are really pretty basic. The recipes are fun. The recipes are surprising. Like, we teach them how to make oat burgers. That's pretty cool. And when they have it, they're like, man, these are really good. Yes, I know. But anyway, so the food service coordinator is going to be the one to go to the grocery, set up the food, the cooking stations, the individual. All right, sorry. It's all stuff that they're going to handle based on the recipes that are given within the program. Now, feel free to adjust those recipes. If you have somebody in your church that's just like a gourmet vegan chef, well, hit that person up for some recipes. I'm not offended. And a matter of fact, email them to me. Right? So then we have our main presenter, and personal preparation is critical. Learn as much as you can about the topic that's being presented. Don't be satisfied with just a superficial knowledge of the topic. Remember how we talked yesterday regarding our Bible studies. You have the basic question and answer Bible study, and then you have all of the supplements that you can add to it to fill it out, to fill it in, right? And within the programs themselves, the presenter is going to have, this is my master binder. Please don't be intimidated by the master binder. I stopped at a 5-inch binder because they didn't have a 7-inch in stock. But here's the script for Freedom from Depression, presentation number 1. So you have the slide on the page, and then you have a word-by-word script to be followed, but also to be personalized. If you have a personal experience with any of the information that is shared on the slide, add that to your presentation. Make it your own presentation. Just because you have a script doesn't mean that everybody is going to, like a presentation that's taking place here at Salem Central would be completely different than a presentation that's taking place in Colorado Springs, Colorado. Because the presenters are different. Their life experiences are different. While the information is foundationally the same, the information that's injected into that presentation to make it personal and to make the presenter personable is going to be somewhat different, okay? So you have all of the slides, you'll have all of the scripts, you'll have everything that you need, but make sure, if you're a presenter, that you thoroughly know the information that you're sharing. I mean, I could send you through like an online class where you have to take quizzes over the information within the individual presentations. Let's be real. I know my church. And I don't need to make this program more challenging to be presented to the community. Right? It's hard enough to get people engaged and involved. I mean, look around. We've got 6 people sitting in this room, right? Group discussion facilitators. These folks can also help at pre-stations such as weight, blood pressure, registration, and on and on. But our group discussion facilitators need to be people that are not mouthy. People who know how to just leave anything that might be discussed in the group in the group. We don't need individuals who will maybe come to church and then tell everybody in their immediate circle about the stuff that was shared in the group discussion during the Free Indeed program. That's not helpful for anyone, right? So these people need to be the ones who are trustworthy, reliable, right? The ones that you would confide in are the folks that you would want to have involved with this.
So is there at any point in the program that somebody needs to be certified for presenting any of the material?
No. No. As far as certification is concerned, no. No. So, blood pressure station, well, if you're a nurse, then you can head out with a blood pressure station. A weight station. Now, these are the first 3 or 4 nights of the Free to Be Healthy and Happy presentation. And we want somebody that's got a discreet demeanor about them. We don't want somebody that's nice and loud. Well, look at there, you only weigh 235 pounds this week. Nope, that's not what we want. We want somebody that's going to say, well done, you did good. And then you have a general helper. Now, this is the only role that the pastor can take. The pastor's not allowed to be the presenter. The pastor's not allowed to be a group discussion facilitator. Why do you think that is? Yeah, the church needs to get involved, but there's a deeper reason for that. Yeah, and he needs to be available for any type of crisis situation, because the people that would be coming to these programs, it stands to reason that they might be in emotional crisis, right? So you need to be able to have the pastor come over and, put a gentle arm around somebody who just needs to, who needs a pastor, to be quite honest. And if the pastor is the one that's giving the presentation and then leading out in group, discussion, the pastor's not available to anybody else. And we want to make sure that Pastor Ben is freed up and any of his helpers are freed up to be able to, to minister to the individual needs of participants who come in. Audio visual equipment, where'd Howard go? Yes, sir.
I just have, and maybe you'll address this and you can tell me if you are. Some of the classes that we're talking about here, depression and addiction,
Mm-hmm.
People may come at different levels in their addiction.
100%.
So some of them have medical needs or are, detoxing and those kinds of things. Being able to know what do we do with those type of situations, how do we handle that, where do we direct these people, because this is not the appropriate place to detox.
Right. So up here with your public relations person is going to be the one to do the research on where we would refer people who are seeking detox measures or seeking, counseling or anything along those lines, so that we would be able to point them into the direction that they need to go for any type of in-depth medical, any type of those things. And I know that we have some really well-meaning, good-hearted medical missionaries among us. I know that we do. Please don't let them detox somebody in their bathtub. I mean, I detoxed my sister in my bathtub, but she was my sister. You know what I'm saying? And I guess there is a time and a place, but that's not what we're getting into. This is not the how to stop taking drugs You know, this is how to put your life back together, right? And by being able to point them into the direction of the professional help that they might need in the middle of their medical crisis is vitally important. So on the registration table, you would have referral cards for, mental health professionals, medical health professionals, in-person, inpatient counseling, rehab. All of those types of agencies would be on the registration table for anybody who might need those. And then, of course, Pastor, being as equipped as he is, will be able to, to take that person and put that referral card into their hand and tell them, you can go and you can call Dr. So-and-so. And, I highly encourage you to do that. So that's what we want to do, is we want to funnel people into the direction of their need based on the agencies that are available in Central or in South Salem. And you've got a wealth of agencies here locally, right? Like Salem doesn't have a dearth of agencies that are ready, willing, and able to help individuals who are, struggling, and they can do it pretty much in their own neighborhood. A lot of communities don't have that. A lot of communities have to, the referrals are 45 minutes away. And, so that can present a special challenge as well. But yes, to answer your question, we do want to funnel them into the direction of the professional help that might be necessary. Select a location for holding your series. In this building, I like your fellowship hall a lot. It's unassuming. It's not intimidating for somebody who might be I hate the term unchurched, but it's not imposing. It's pretty neutral. And then you get folks used to coming to the church building, and then you have an event later on that invites them into the sanctuary. So it goes from being an introduction to biblical principles from a health perspective, from mental and emotional well-being, to more of a worship atmosphere. Whereas if you jump straight into the sanctuary, you're at church. See what I mean? It's a little different. Yeah, perfect.
The only thing is that they just voted to not permit the churches to use the room that usually they use at the kitchen, because they have moved the quilt ministry into that room, and it takes up almost the whole thing.
So the kitchen's not available there?
No, not at this time. At least they took action about it just at the end last year. Okay. To suspend that.
Well, that's a bummer.
Put a request in and see what they do, because that would be very ideal.
It's not the church, it's close to the church.
Neutral ground.
Neutral ground is really a great, great, great thing. Yeah. It is agreed that the Free Indeed Cycle of Health and Wellness Evangelism is offered on a free to the public basis. There's never to be a charge for participation. And I have had intense discussion with many other ministry leaders, directors, and on. And as a literature evangelist, a colporteur, I understand the concept of investment. I understand very clearly the concept of investment. That if you're invested in something, you tend to take it more seriously. I get that. 100% I understand. Narcotics Anonymous is free. Alcoholics Anonymous is free. Celebrate Recovery is free. All of these things are free to the public. Now, there are materials that can be purchased. Sure. If they want to purchase the textbook by Dr. Julian Malgosa, which is by and large where the vast majority of the information for the Freedom from Depression program comes from, absolutely, it's available for purchase. It's $59.95, and I will ship it straight to their door. But it's not necessary, and it's not a requirement. I understand that the Free to Be Healthy and Happy with the cooking and the food that's involved is an investment that the church is going to make. Again, though, did Jesus charge admission when he fed the 5,000? No. I use this analogy all the time. I just don't find in the scriptures where Jesus heals somebody and then says, well, that'll be $49.95. No. I understand the concept of investment. When you're talking about people who are striving to overcome depression and addiction specifically, and who are longing for something more than they can get at an Alcoholics Anonymous or a Narcotics Anonymous or any other of those types of programs, they're already invested. By and large, they know that their lives are on the line. There couldn't be a deeper investment. So these programs are offered free to the public. There's never a charge for participation. Accompanying handouts and printed materials are included for all participants at no cost. Additional books and other materials are available for purchase, like I said, but are never a requirement for participation, okay? So schedule the series several weeks into the future. Ideally, you would schedule several weeks into the future to ensure ample time to become familiar with the series, content, and material. About 4 weeks before you start, you want to confirm your venue, get your planning committee meeting to assign roles. I'm looking at my committee. Bulletin announcements, inserts, public service announcements to TV and radio stations are completely free. Did you know that? Yeah, they're completely free. So if you're creating a new thing, and they will do a quarterly announcement, Pastor, many areas, many markets, especially in TV and radio, they'll do a quarterly announcement completely free. And then the trick is to have news come and do an expose. So you have them come and highlight the programs that you're doing so that it shows on, the midday news and the evening news the following day. Editorials can be sent to area newspapers and their online presence, and editorials are another free avenue by which you can highlight what's being done, the success that you're seeing, the number of participants, the type of information that you're going over. And then 2 weeks before you start, please have a special season of prayer, 2 to 4 hours of united prayer for people who will attend the workshops. Now that I recommend to take place on a Sabbath afternoon after potluck. Just ask everybody to stay back and just have a special prayer session just before you begin. Church members are notorious for not paying attention to announcements and then claiming ignorance of events. Am I wrong? I love the chuckle. This is the best. So, how many times, Pastor, have you had somebody come up to you and say, well, I didn't know anything about that? And you're like, really? Because I talked about it for 46 minutes from the front. I mean, we know our church. Announcements for upcoming events cannot be overdone. Hold your congregation accountable. When you're having chats with your fellow church members, don't just hold them accountable from the pulpit. Hold them accountable in your conversation with each other, at your church board meeting, at your business meetings, at potluck. Just straight up ask people, well, what are you doing on Monday nights? We could really use your expertise. Just straight up, ask them. And then be intentional about making sure that the members of the church are aware and involved. Equipment needs are going to vary with the venue. Most commonly required equipment is a computer, projector, audio, a presentation clicker. You like how that's the official word there. Extension cords, surge protectors, screen, a scale, which is, it usually needs to weigh up to 400 pounds, preferably with a weight kilogram transposition, which will weigh higher. A measuring tape for height, and blood pressure cuffs, digital cuffs, and usually, any nurse comes with a blood pressure cuff, right? I think it's part of the uniform. Do you know the trick to keeping your extension cords from walking off? Tape them. Tape them in a couple of different locations along the cord itself, and somebody will think that it's a frayed cord, and they won't walk off with it. Isn't that weird? My son-in-law, listen, I'm sorry. My son-in-law is an electrician, and my dad's a mechanic, and I know the tricks to keep people from stealing your tools. Networking builds relationships with other health-concerned health workers. We have health professionals in this congregation, correct? Go to the hospital, go to the doctor's offices with a flyer, with a printed flyer, and ask them if you can post the flyer for the events that are upcoming. Let them know that it's a free to the public program that's being held to help people achieve wellness of mind, body, and soul. You'd be amazed at how many of the healthcare professionals will come. We had one lady in Dallas, her name is Melody, and she's the caregiver of a lady who wanted to attend. Well, the lady who wanted to attend can't come without Melody. Well, now Melody is in. She hook, line, and sinker. She loves this. Yeah. So absolutely. Contact your local health departments and alert them to your organization's central concentrated efforts in helping your community. If your organization does not have representatives who serve as members on the local health council, join them. Do we have members of the church on the local health councils? Well, let's be intentional about that, because that's free to join. Are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce? Pastor, are we a member of the Chamber of Commerce? All right, then. So talk to the Chamber of Commerce. Make sure that they know what we're doing. Ask the health departments to be on the lookout for grant opportunities. They will absolutely help you do that. Contact your local hospitals. And many local churches are willing to host a seminar at their facility and contribute funds to help improve the health of their community. Have we thought about reaching out to the local Methodist community? How about the local Baptist community? Because, newsflash, I will take this program into any church denomination. These programs are not denominationally specific. Very intentionally, they're not denominationally specific. Now, am I sneaky? Sure. Right? Because if I go into the Baptist community, well, they're going to get the freedom from depression, freedom from addiction, and the free to be healthy and happy. But then we're going to invite everybody who's come to those programs to the local Seventh-day Adventist church for the freedom from worry, guilt, and fear. Right? Yeah. Of course we're sneaky. I am skipping past some stuff that I've covered and then also some stuff that I've adjusted. So the purchase class materials, I am not well, it's not that I don't recommend it, because sure, if you want to get these things and have them available for folks, the Full Plate Diet is fantastic. Goodbye Diabetes by Dr. Wes Youngberg is also great, and then The End of Diabetes by Dr. Joel Furman is also fantastic, but they're not necessary. I have not included information from them, from those titles specifically into the program materials, okay? And then under class materials, the heading class materials, it says we make a participant handbook for purchase. That's not true. The participant handbook is on its way from the printer, and that is free to participants. It's included, each church gets 100 copies of that participant handbook with their sponsorship of the programs, and then the church would just order more participant handbooks as they are necessary. They're not 100% necessary, however, because all of the material that's in the printed handbook is also in the thumb drive and printable materials. But I will tell you that in the long run, it's cheaper for the church to just reorder more workbooks than it is to print, a wealth of paper. Paper and toner is not cheap. And I've gotten the price of the participant workbook down to like $6. And the participant workbook covers freedom from addiction, freedom from depression, and freedom from worry, guilt, and fear. Okay, so it's all of the materials in one workbook. Okay. Food samples and supplies. You want to give careful emphasis to your presentation. You want to clearly delineate the food preparation guidelines. The stations are relatively easy to set up based on the recipes. The recipes are laminated, so they can be wiped off as necessary, because I don't know how messy you are in your kitchen, but I'm a disaster zone. And those laminated recipe cards are pretty handy. But make sure that everything is clearly labeled. In the past, what I've done is I have a separate table with all of the measuring equipment, a separate table for all of the grocery items, so that folks can, it makes it even more interactive when they go to like a specific station and select their grocery items based on their recipe. We want it to be as fun and fully interactive as possible, okay? But just make sure that everything is clearly marked. So the meeting details: encourage participants to come early if they call to pre-register. Now, in public service announcements, social media posts, editorials, those types of things, we're going to encourage people to pre-register because, of course, space is limited, right? Even though we know it's not. We can always have overflow upstairs. But we always want to encourage people to pre-register. So when they do, we want to encourage them to come early. And as they come in, they're going to sign in at the registration table where they will receive their name tag, registration card, class materials for that night. And they can also have the opportunity to purchase materials as they need to. So height, we don't need to check somebody, especially for the health and wellness presentations. We don't need to check somebody's height every time they come in. Are they growing? Are they shrinking? No, just check their height just the once. And when you do, so I was shocked when I went to my primary care 3 or 4 years ago. It was right before I was supposed to have sinus surgery, and they did my height, and I'm like 5'6.5". Well, I've been 5'8" my whole life. What do you mean I'm only 5'6.5"? No. That's what I thought too. And so we went to the next room, and she's like, "No, honey, you're 5'6.5". And I was like, "Well, now I got to change my driver's license. What do you mean?" And so people will be shocked at how much they have shrunk over the years. A station is necessary through sessions 3 or 4 because you'll have new people that do come in. Do weigh participants every night, even though Pastor Les Jones was not excited about the weight station. I will tell on him a little bit. He was really funny, though. He said, "You're doing this on purpose." I said, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am." But he would step up on the scale, and he would either celebrate, or he would be like, "Really? I've eaten nothing but vegetables for the past 7 days. This is insanity." Following the numbers allows them to track their progress. Weigh where the where participants can have privacy and don't state their weight aloud. Just simply point to the number. I don't want somebody announcing how much I weigh. Even if I'm happy with my progress, please don't tell everybody that I weigh 205 pounds this morning. Like, wow, you're really huge. No, that's not good. That's terrible. The blood pressure check. So for folks who are not 100% familiar with the workings of a blood pressure cuff, it's easy to use an electronic blood pressure cuff to check pressures. And it doesn't require a medical degree to do it that way, right? If you don't have any, like if a church were to be a super small congregation without any healthcare professionals among them, they could use an electronic cuff and get a pretty reliable and accurate reading, no problem. So food sampling is not really sampling, it's morphed into full-on fellowship meal, okay? Many people are reluctant to try high fiber recipes or foods they are not used to eating. So that's why Jesus and I, decided to move forward with incorporating the food stations, the actual cooking aspect, not from a person standing up front and telling them how to cook it, but from them themselves, because it eliminates that stigma. Now they see how easy it was this was really easy to make, and this was really good. So it eliminates all of that, okay? And then some participants will do so well in just a short time that they're going to wish that they had a before picture. So we can offer, would you like to do a before picture? And 90% of them will say, nope. But then you say, you're going to wish you had. And they're like, all right, fine. And I'm going to say, all right, don't suck your gut in. Right? And then at the end of the 6 weeks, when they do see progress, they might not have lost pounds, numbers, but size, right? Size will change even if the number doesn't, and they'll be able to visually see. And it's like, wow, where did my neck go? It matters. Listen, I don't care what that number says. I need to be able to fit back into my pinstripe suit. That's all there is to it. Okay. So during the welcome time, you're going to introduce your team and your team of volunteers, acknowledge the sponsors of your program, and thank them for their contributions. The first night, review the additional documents in their packet of handouts, which are definitely series specific. Applaud the success stories. Excuse me. Identify some failures and encourage the efforts that others have made to overcome those barriers that contributed to the failures. This can be a real growing and bonding time for the group, but be sure to keep that time brief, okay? This is especially specific to the Free to Be Healthy and Happy, okay? Because, and for me, it's like, well, I had really tried to stay away from sugary treats. But then Thanksgiving happened, and, well, that's pie season. And, so you just let them know that we're all human. But in the days and weeks since, I haven't had a single slice of pie or a piece of fudge throughout the whole of the Christmas holiday season. And so I'm really celebrating that fact. The prayer and spiritual acknowledgement from the presentation script, this is what it says within the script itself. Welcome to the Freedom from Depression seminar. This is a part of the Free Indeed series of seminars and workshops, which is designed to help people live life to the absolute fullest in a world of turmoil. This is a faith-based program. Family Health and Education Resources is a Christian ministry that partners with community services organizations, churches of various denominational backgrounds, local government agencies, and health and wellness organizations in order to provide these workshops within the community without cost or obligation. This series is sponsored by the Salem Central Seventh-day Adventist Church, and we are very thankful for the opportunity to partner with them. As I mentioned, Family Health and Education Resources is a Christian ministry. I'm on page 10, Robert. But we are not here to push our ideals or beliefs on anyone. The information shared throughout this and each of our different workshops is done from the biblical perspective and always with kindness and compassion. All are welcome and wanted here. Each of our meetings begins and ends with a brief prayer, but no one is obligated to participate. If you are comfortable doing so, fantastic. If not, no worries. We want each person who joins us for these sessions to be completely comfortable in this setting. That said, I'm going to bow for prayer and invite you to join me. Loving Father in heaven, thank you for the opportunity to come together in this place to explore how to live free from depression and anxiety. Please guide our time tonight and bless our efforts as we learn. Bless us with the sweet spirit of Jesus. In Jesus' name, amen. Why do you think it's necessary to have the prayer scripted?
I guess one reason would be so you won't go too long.
100% factual. We all know that dear brother or sister who will preach a sermon in their prayer. Right? It's just how it is. And so this is designed to keep it short, sweet, and to the point. And this introduction is at the beginning of every presentation. Why? New people, but also we want to remind people that we are a Christian ministry. We are coming from the biblical perspective. This is our worldview. I mean, just on a side note, my oldest son is estranged from our family. There are some details that are truly horrific and hard to chew on if you're a mother. He struggles with having Christian beliefs pushed on him. And when he calls me and, is either trying to grapple with his reality or overcome, some level of personal, mental, or emotional crisis, I always tell him the same thing. Josh, do you want to hear what I have to say? Because you know my worldview. You know that I cannot just turn that off and speak to you or anyone else from a perspective other than the way I see it through the scriptures. And last night was a perfect example. And I told him, I was like, this is my worldview. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. I believe what the Bible says is true. So when we introduce ourselves at the beginning of every presentation as a Christian ministry, there's nothing that anybody in the world hates more, in my opinion, than the bait and switch. You go into a car dealership and they've offered this and they've offered that. Well, that's not really available. This is what's really available, right? It's dishonest. It's just not cool. So by doing this and introducing every presentation as with the reminder that what you're about to hear No matter if you've come because you're trying to overcome addiction yourself, you're trying to grapple with, wrap your head around, and figure out how to navigate the addiction of someone you love, or if you're in the very pits of despair and you've just been so depressed so long you don't even know how to pick your head up, or you're sick and tired of being sick and tired and you just don't want to keep shooting insulin into your fat tissue. Regardless of what it is why you've come through the doors to come to these programs, everything that you hear is going to be spoken in love and compassion, but always from the biblical perspective. And it's important that people know that. This is not a spiritualistic, just trust the God of your understanding. No, we believe in the Creator God. And that's why this is vitally important. To be successful, practice the presentation aloud at least 3 times before presenting before a live audience. And slow down. I love Sue Clavel. I think she's amazing. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. And she gave the presentation last month or so. And it was an exercise in speed reading. It was just as fast as it could possibly be. Be intentional. Slow down so that your audience can hear you and absorb what's coming at them. So, the exercise portion of the Free to Be Healthy and Happy, you're going to break up your learning session with exercise, but that doesn't mean CrossFit, right? We're not talking about bear crawls here, right? We're not flipping tires over and climbing ropes. No. And if you have someone who's not necessarily physically able to do jumping jacks, the whole point of high-intensity interval training is to get your heart rate up for 30-ish seconds, and then bring it back down for 2 to 3 minutes, and then bring it back up for 30-ish seconds, bring it back down for 2 to 3 minutes, and then back up for 30 seconds and back down, right? So you want to do 3 rotations. And it's not hard to do that. For those of you who are medical professionals, someone who's just had heart surgery is not allowed to do what? Absolutely. But so are they allowed to do a whole bunch of upper body? No. Open heart, but how about just a, simple heart cath? How about, we say simple, right? Can you imagine 200 years ago? I'm going to snake this tube. No, you're not. You don't have to get up out of your chair in order to get your heart rate up, right? Okay, so you ready let's practice this ready? You got 15 seconds? Let's do this. Right? But your heart rate is going up. So you don't have to be it doesn't have to be crazy exercises. You could literally just do this for 30 seconds and then just rest for 2 minutes, and you're going to achieve exactly what we're after in the high intensity interval training, right? So you don't have to you don't have to kill yourself. Just, wrinkle your shirt a little bit. What? That's it. Well, let's not have a fourth heart attack. Okay. Good grief. How long ago was your last heart attack? What a question to ask somebody. Did you put away the deep fried Twinkies? Oh, yeah. Really? Hereditary. Good grief. Really? Well, can we keep an eye on this guy, please? Whew. Yeah. You just completely threw me 3 heart attacks. So our group discussion and SMART goals, behavior modification is a difficult task, okay? How easy is it to start a bad habit? It's in our human nature. It truly is. It's in our nature to do self-destructive things. It's just the sad truth of it. Having a lifestyle coach at each table is incredibly helpful. Coaching guidelines have been prepared for each session to guide in the goal-setting activity. The participants must set their own goals. What's the difference between me setting your goals for you and you setting your goals for you? Other than the fact that if I set your goals for you, I've just established a medical relationship.
Sometimes they can be unrealistic for what someone's capable of doing because I might want to set goals that I think you should be able to reach, but maybe you can't.
Right. Right.
And then if you give me my goals, I think there's no way in heck I'm going to reach that.
Right.
You're kind of starting off with a defeated perspective.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then it feels like an assignment rather than an achievement, you know. Sure. Sure. That's where the personal investment comes in. So what's a goal that you want to set with it? Well, I mean, my goal for today is that I would finish my, 3 quarts of water by 6 p.m., right? Well, I mean, I'm on my way. SMART goals and daily logs have been prepared to help the learner focus on making appropriate health goals and keeping track of their success. Blank spaces are for the participant to fill in goals that are appropriate for them. Tomorrow, not tomorrow, but our next training session, I will have the workbooks, and you'll be able to see those blank health goals within them. I suppose, yeah, I do. I have my handy dandy notebook. Oh, my screen is always so gross. And every time I open it up, I'm like, I'm going to clean that screen. But then guess what? Never happens. Ever. It's terrible. So here's the PDF of the daily habits tracker. And I'll have this up here so you can look at it. But so daily we track the mood, personal improvement, or your SMART goals, our sleep goals, unplug and wind down, exercise, benevolent service, water intake, meal planning, focused rest, sunshine intake, attitude of gratitude, and anything personal that they'd like to add to that. Okay, so these are our daily habit trackers, and it's also in a workbook format that's available to participants if they would like to have a copy. But it's also printable so that folks can just have individual sheets if they want. To be successful at recovering health and wellness, it is imperative that the participant lose weight. Usually. Now, my Aunt Jackie, God rest her soul, was the exception to this rule. I've never in my life even heard of somebody with cholesterol as high as hers. And she was thin as a rail. She was. Stick skinny. She was this big around. And she had cholesterol nearing 500. I'm telling you the truth. It was insanity. But she ate more meat than I've ever seen a person consume. It was like she ate meat sandwiches that weren't on bread with lettuce and tomato. It was meat between meat on top of meat. And it was wild to watch her eat. But anyway, it's basically she was on the Atkins diet because before Atkins became trendy, she could have, probably marketed that herself. But then he died of a heart attack, and I don't think it was his fourth. Yeah. Anyway. I don't know that she ever paid attention to it, but sadly she passed away of cancer almost 2 years ago. Yeah. And she was riddled with it it started out as breast cancer and then it became metastatic and she had cancer in her lungs, her bones. It was bad. It was really bad. But anyway, so it's not only about size. A safe weight goal is 1 to 2 pounds per week. And I feel like that's old data. I do. And did you know, I found this in all my research, it takes 17 years for new medical research to find its way into mainstream practice. 17 years. Unless there's a pandemic. Right. But let's just think about it. What about obesity? If you're looking at sheer numbers, obesity is at pandemic levels. Right? Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment that not everybody uses the same way.
No.
You don't want to make somebody feel like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. I went to a doctor to lose weight one time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was following everything exactly as they told me, and I didn't lose anything for 3 weeks, and they told me you're not doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Mm-hmm.
And the next week when I went in, I lost 20 pounds. And it just took a long time, and then all of a sudden it came off. So you need to be careful.
Well, and they don't take into consideration leptin resistance. They don't take hormones into consideration. They don't take thyroid function into consideration. They don't take many of the varying factors into consideration. We are all created equal, but we are not physiologically the same.
So you don't want to make somebody feel like they're
Not at all.
doing the right thing if they say they are.
Right. So when my mother passed away suddenly at 61 years old, and then less than 2 months later, we relocated from Michigan to Massachusetts. So I had 2 massive, massive stressors that basically shut my thyroid down. And I gained 70 pounds in 4 months. And I have been for the past 7 years, almost 8 years, trying to get that weight off. When I went to doctor after doctor after doctor trying to figure out what was going on with me, because nothing changed. They tested all my levels. They said my thyroid was functioning properly. They tested this, they tested that. Everything's normal. Maybe you didn't really gain the weight. It was all in your head. I was like, are you kidding me? I talk about my pinstripe suit a lot, but it's the suit that I wore to my mother's funeral. 6 months at this point, 6 months previous. And I took my suit into my doctor's office. And I'm like, this is right here. I wore this suit 6 months ago. Please don't tell me I'm just imagining the fact that I've gone from a size 8 to a size 14. And then, all the stuff that goes along with it. I did a 10-day juice fast and gained 6 pounds. So, like something was broken, right? And it didn't even matter. I did a 3-day water fast. I didn't take anything but water in to do a complete immune reset at the onset of the pandemic. And I gained 1.5 pounds then too. I'm like, well, that's it. This is what we got. And so, and I have finally found what's working for me, and I am steadily losing. But it has been a real exercise in prayer and appreciation for this struggle, for the weight loss struggle. So again, I feel like this is dated, a little bit dated. If a person is morbidly obese, they're going to lose weight faster. It's just how it goes. The more weight you need to lose, usually the faster you lose it. And the faster you have put it on, the harder it is to lose. That's what I found. That's my experience. Many participants will have a little jump in their weight between the first and second weeks. They are making changes in their diet and not considering all of those ramifications. It's important to make sure that participants expect that this might happen, okay? So yes, we know that weight loss, by and large, especially where diabetes is concerned, because diabetes and obesity usually walk hand in hand, unless it's type 1 diabetes, then we know that weight loss is a thing, but we don't focus on weight loss at all. We focus on health principles, healthy habits, healthy lifestyle choices, and those types of things. Help participants set benchmarks so that they can review their goals, and they will be able to make adjustments in their plan and thus stay on track to achieve those goals, okay? For many participants, the information presented each night is a huge amount of information that they have never heard before. Once again, asking God's blessing on them as they leave. Make it short. No sermons. No sermons. Now, the prayer when you leave is led by the group discussion facilitator. So, Lord, bless our time. We thank you for the opportunity to come together. Please go with us as we part ways. Give us the strength and ability to implement the things that we've learned, and bring us together again next week. In Jesus' name, amen. Like super, super short, sweet, and to the point, right? And persistence. It does take dedicated effort to engage in health and wellness evangelism. It's not a one and done, right? It's not something that you're just going to do once and say, well, we tried that and that didn't work. No, you have to keep at it. It's not simply teaching people how to implement the laws of health in order to become healthy physically, but it requires an intentionality to bring them to the feet of the great physician. Think of the man in Mark 2 whose friends had such care for him that they couldn't pass through the crowd, sorry for that typo, to present their friend to Jesus. They climbed up on the roof, removed the tiles, and lowered their sick and dying friend in front of the only one who could help him. We need to have that level of persistent dedication when it comes to bringing folks to these programs and helping the ones who do come, okay? We, again, must be much in prayer for God to work and for the success of the series of workshops. Be persistent and commit to repeating the cycle again and again. It's the hope of Family Health and Education Resources that these workshops would be repeated on a 5-year plan, and that the sponsoring church would gain a reputation within the community as a center of influence for the help for the hurting. As long as there is disease and misery, there will always be need for this information, right? The more sessions that are presented, the more informed and empowered you will become. Do not be discouraged with small attendance. Many of these people will become the strongest supporters of the program, okay? At the time, equipment, and energy devoted to programs of this nature retains the potential to be used again and again. And soon, word of mouth will become the most valuable advertising mechanism. And before finishing one series, have the next one scheduled. People will bring friends family members to them. As physicians and other health providers learn of the program's successes, as soon as they begin to see the clinical numbers of their patients begin to change, they will start asking questions and start referring many of their patients to these programs, okay? Free Indeed is copyrighted material, but I don't really care. It's copyrighted for legal reasons, right? If somebody were to take the materials and completely distort and change them, then I can protect myself by saying, well, it's copyrighted and I didn't give authorization for that. But at the same time, I do encourage people to share freely. The church has purchased copyrights to these programs and the materials. So like I was saying yesterday, I don't think you were there at that time, Pastor. Who's the dear sister with the short blonde hair that was in the black coat yesterday? What's her name? Nope. That one, no, that was Charlene. So you have one Charlene and then the other Charlene, but then you had the other blonde lady that was on the other side. Anyway, maybe. I'm telling you, I'm terrible with names. She was asking about the use of the materials. And, the church has sponsored the materials. So if a church member wants to say, do an addiction series with a group of their close personal friends and family at their home, I encourage that to happen. Because there are people who would come to a friend's house who might not be comfortable coming to a church or a church setting for anything like that. So yes, it is copywritten material, but that's for legal reasons. I do encourage as much free sharing and free use as possible. The seminars and workshops are to be presented in entirety as designed and set forth herein. You like that legal jargon there? Editing and omissions will be construed to represent copyright infringement. Again, this entire paragraph is inserted at my attorney's insisting. Permission is given to print accompanying documents in their original format to be used when presenting the seminars and workshops in direct association with the Free Indeed Cycle of Health and Wellness Evangelism. Many of the files most of them are in read-only format. The letter to the doctor will need to be edited with your local information and seminar date. Other incidental forms may be edited as necessary. Otherwise, the program is to be used as provided. I do ask that you don't change the program materials, but use them freely, okay? So the next page, you have just a basic registration sheet, registration sign-in sheet. At the beginning of every Freedom from Addiction program, participants are given a Serenity Prayer bookmark. And the Serenity Prayer is real basic, but it's so profound. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. How many of us, on a day-to-day basis, just walk around punching underwater, trying to change the things that we have no control over, and an unwillingness to accept the things that are truly beyond our power? Have we, even as Christian people, obtained the ability, the understanding, and thereby the ability to truly lay things at the foot of the cross and leave them there? How many times do we go back over to the cross and pick stuff up and say, nope, never mind, I decided to worry about this one today myself, right? That's where this Serenity Prayer comes in. And we talk about, throughout the programs, we talk about the Serenity Prayer because most of the things that we're addressing within the programs themselves involve that courage to change the things I can. Implementing lifestyle changes, implementing mindset changes It requires a level of courage that we don't often acknowledge. It takes courage for my husband to eat tofu. He hates it with a purple passion. It's the saddest thing I think I've ever seen. I'm like, really, babe? It's tofu. It doesn't have teeth. It will not bite you. It's fine, right? I make amazing tofu. I have a sautéed tofu recipe that's pretty fantastic. And every time he eats it, he says, man, that was really good. I'm like, so why are you so afraid of it? I don't know. It's just tofu. And I'm like, well, pick up the courage. You got this. You can handle it. The facilitator's document folder within the church files also has the template for your name badges. So print it. I use cardstock. Print the name on it. And then the one thing that you're going to do is you're going to number your name cards 1 through 6. Okay? And have them in a stack. And the reason that you want to stack them 1 through 6 is because if you two were to come into the program together, right? She's going to come to the registration table first, and she's going to fill out her name card, and it's going to have the number 1 on it. And then your name card is going to be next, and it has number 2 on it. Why? No. I mean, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. No. But because when you go into your group discussions, we want to separate husbands and wives. Why?
They don't want my wife to know what I'm telling them about her.
That's right. We want people to be able to speak freely. Okay? So the reason that we number the name badges is so that we can separate you without being overt about the fact that we're separating you. Right. And if we have a small number of people that have gathered, we'll do 1s and 3s here. We never do 1s and 2s together, never 3s and 4s together, but either odd numbers and even numbers. That way, if people have come in together, there's still a degree of separation. Okay? So the foundation of the series is the biblical standard for health, and it's also the handout for Freedom from Depression session number 5. And we know the New Start, right, acronym, but the New Start acronym is, forgive me, it's incomplete. It's incomplete. So we know that we have nutrition, exercise, water, sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust, right? So there's New Start. But often what gets missed is cleanliness. It is absolutely imperative to healthful living. God very specifically instructed Israel on how to keep disease and infection out of the camp and how to keep it from spreading and rid the camp of it once it had entered. Modern medicine has encouraged proper hand washing and hygienic practices as a means of reducing the spread of germs. And then very closely related to personal cleanliness is clean and fresh personal environment. We know the detriment to the health and well-being of small children who are raised in the homes of smokers. So this is just one example of the health implications of a clean home environment. And then also missing from our healthy acronym is purity of life and moral integrity. It's something that is hardly ever considered when it comes to a person's overall health and well-being. The Bible clearly says, whatsoever a man soweth, that also shall he reap, right? And then, last but not least, dress. Now, I don't mean dressing in your very best 1830s costume. Isn't that what it is? I mean, I have a lot of dear sisters who wear nothing but long skirts. God bless them. Okay? But I'm not mowing the grass in a long skirt. Come on, man, let's do it. right? We got our robes, got the outer cloaks, some Air Jesus. Come on, they're Birkenstocks. Jesus was the first Birkenstocks owner, and you know I'm right. But dressing appropriately for the weather and protecting our extremities from both heat and cold is vital to proper blood and oxygen circulation, right? There's a reason why women don't wear corsets anymore. Could you imagine? What are you doing? I'm trying to breathe. It's terrible. Avoiding crowding the internal organs by the use of tight or restrictive clothing, choosing shoes that promote proper alignment of the hips and spine are often overlooked as the cause of illness and pain, right? So we talk about those things, not in a, dogmatic, beat you over the head kind of way, right? We don't need to be men only wearing suspenders because a belt is unhealthy. You have no idea. I sat through a 30-minute lecture on the evils of a belt. You know, you get in trouble for scrolling Facebook during the sermon. I've never done that, Pastor. Right? But if you think for half a second that I wasn't taking notes and doing everything that I could do to not just say, excuse me, sir, stop talking. Because it was just horrible. There's no reason to be dogmatic about these things, but just to present them in a nonsensical, straightforward, practical way. If it's snowing outside, put on a jacket. That's going to keep you from potentially catching pneumonia. That's just common sense, right? Common sense that is not common anymore. And here I have the quotes for councils on health and the ministry of healing. And then we have our group discussion guidelines. So this is basically the standard guidelines for the entire program. Welcome everyone and introduce yourself. This is for your group discussion after the presentation. Encourage everyone to introduce themselves and just a bit of information, occupation, where they live, how they heard about the current Free Indeed program, okay? We're not going to ask people to tell us everything that they're guilty of and, what their A1C levels are or, how much they weighed at the weigh station, right? Week by week, the group should remain the same, except for new joining people. This ensures continuity and fosters comfort within the group dynamic. If the group is always changing, you're always having to get used to new people, right? Are you going to be free and open with your discussion? I mean, I'll talk to anybody, so I don't count. But yeah, people are going to be a little more closed. But week by week, as we build relationships and develop, a level of comfort with individuals, you want to encourage participation by asking direct questions of group members, such as, what stood out to you about tonight's presentation? What was surprising? What did you already know? What did you not know? Things like that. Listen attentively. When someone is speaking, give them your 100% attention. Are you guys familiar with the term active listening? Do you know how to participate in active listening? So if you're a group facilitator, and you have just a small little legal pad, while someone is talking, if they say something that you want to come back to, write down a couple of those key words, and then later come back to that. And, you'd be like, well, you mentioned, that you're unsure about benevolent service. So let's talk about that. What are the things that are unsure or whatever? That way you're giving them your full undivided attention and listening to what they have to say, and are able to then revisit and address any of their concerns instead of just simply waiting for your turn to talk. That's not listening. Let me say that again. Waiting for your turn to talk is not listening. And I have tried so hard to instill that in my children, because I can see them, like, it's still not your turn, but you're not listening. right? And anyway, I tried several exercises with my kids when they were younger to teach them that. Remain calm and compassionate. People are struggling with untold myriads of past horrors. Don't show shock or disgust at anything that you might hear. Oh, can you imagine? If you, being an individual who has struggled with, some things, and you finally are at a place where you want to just say, I'm trying to overcome this, or I'm guilty of that, and I just have a hard time accepting forgiveness, whatever it is, right? And the person that you're talking to says, what is that going to do to your confidence?
One thing I think about too is having a family member. I have a brother-in-law who has come from a world of heavy addiction, and I worked in an emergency room for 12 years as a ER nurse, and so we're going to hear language, we're going to hear horrible situations in people's lives that we can't be shocked by and we can't recoil from. And if they're using language that we know is not good language, we have to be careful how we handle that, because if we recoil from them, they're going to see that as, because this is all they know. And when they're talking like that, we have to be able to have the maturity to say, I have to work on that later. Right now I need to listen to what this person's saying.
You have to stop the bleeding, right? If a person comes into the emergency room with a gunshot wound to the chest, right, you have to stop the bleeding first. Then we can worry about the fact that they're, involved in drugs and gangs and whatever else. We can worry about those things later. And many times people who are deeply entrenched in whatever lifestyle, right? Heathen lifestyle. My little sister calls herself my favorite heathen. She's probably right. But she's got the worst mouth. Oh, and I tell her, sis, language. And she's like, oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. Right? She doesn't even hear it. She doesn't even hear her, right. She doesn't even hear it. And it had gotten to a point where I was like, I'm going to need 3 synonyms from that word. And she's like, really? Yeah, before we can even continue, I need 3 synonyms. Anyway, it's my sister. I can be mean to her. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Go ahead. No, sis, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, you can't let anybody, you can't show them that you're shocked by anything. You need to just act like it's normal when you talk to these people, because they are gonna have shocking things, and you just have to.
And also, and I know that this might sound like you're being fake, but stand in your bathroom mirror and see what your face of compassion looks like. Do you have a look of compassion? Do you have one that looks like, or is it like, right? If you know what you look like when you're thinking of different circumstances, that's going to help you manage your facial expressions when you are having challenging and difficult conversations with people, right? I'm so expressive. My mouth, I'm good. It's my face that needs deliverance. It's bad. And I'm just, there's a meme my kids sent me, and it's a kitten, and it looks like, how a cat looks right before they sneeze, like their face is contorted. And it says, I'm sorry for the things my face said while you were talking. And it's the truth. Oh, it's so true. Go ahead.
She was able to do it like this. And she would start stepping back from the, like if we're hot, she would you react, like your face, and so they had careful with that.
Yeah, I mean, you really do. And also when you're putting your team together, when you're going up to your church members who are not here today, we know our church members, right? We know who we go to church with. Right. Well, I mean, you'll learn. But right, Pastor? And you don't want to put certain individuals in certain roles, Like, we talked about, I use the dipped in vinegar Christian, the sour, just, ugh, right? Happy Sabbath. Like, oh, that's not the guy you want at the door, right? And you don't want the one that is maybe a bubble Christian. It's a term that I use often to talk about the people who would just really have never ventured beyond, the safety of the walls of Adventism. They're fourth, fifth generation. Everybody's been through Pathfinders. Everybody's been through Andrews. Everybody's, serving on the church board, and nobody's ever had a real world problem. Bless those sweethearts. We need those people to run potluck. Absolutely. But you want to be able to invite people to participate and take on the roles who are best suited for those roles. And that's why. Keep the discussion a group discussion by not allowing one or two to monopolize the conversation. Now, this requires a certain skill set. I am not afraid to interrupt a talker. You have to at some points, And it also helps to set parameters. Like if, Robert and I were chatting and he's like, hey, do you have a minute? I'd be like, I've actually got 2.5, go. You need to set your expectations, manage those expectations, and then manage the group discussion. If you have somebody who's good at leading out in small groups or whatever, again, this is the person that you want to ask to participate in this way. Never speak down to a person. Condescending Christians do just a ton of damage. Like, why would you do that? Well, because I felt like it, Susan, right? Like, it just really, really creates an abrasive response and reaction that it's just not welcome in this setting. It's just not in any setting, but this one specifically. Remember that compassion and careful redirection will be necessary, okay? People are struggling to regain control of their lives by and large. And you know how people get on a merry-go-round? And they just go round and round and round and round. And the next time you talk to them, they're still going round and round. Same scenery, same details, same merry-go-round and around and around. I'm a solutions-based person. So when I'm ministering with a person, no matter how dysfunctional their background might be or anything else, I let people know up front. Okay, sure, we can do some one-on-one ministry, no problem. But let me tell you a little bit about me. I can schedule 2 hours, and we can sit and chat, and you're probably going to want to write down all of the major points that you want to cover in that 2 hours, okay? Air as many grievances as you want to air. Because the next time we meet, we're not going to go over those grievances again. We're going to look at solutions, and we're going to look at ways to correct behaviors, and we're going to look at new ways of dealing with challenges rather than riding the merry-go-round. If you would like someone to ride the merry-go-round with you, I'm not that guy. But you have to be able to redirect people who are stuck on the merry-go-round. For many people, when we'll say they're dealing with a childhood trauma, right? Like when I was in kindergarten, my mother quite literally beat me in the hallway of my elementary school, and my kindergarten teacher did nothing to even intervene. And it was a full-on beating. It wasn't discipline. It was brutal. It was bad. And I was left bruised and bloody. And I was 5 years old. In 1980, it was child abuse, but whatever. Now, I have since dealt with those things from my past. I have been very intentional about healing and personal recovery from those types of traumas. But a person who has never appropriately dealt with any of the things that have either happened to them or things that they themselves are guilty of, they're stuck in a rut. Do you know how back in the horse and buggy days, a mother could literally send her 4-year-old to town with a note pinned to his shirt, and the horse would lead the wagon all the way into town. Not because the horse was incredibly smart, not because the 4-year-old was capable of going into town by himself, but because the wagon wheels had created such a rut in the road, they really had no other choice. They would just kind of follow the track. People get stuck in their ruts unless we help lift them out of them. And that's what this is designed to do, is give people fresh perspective on how to deal with appropriately and overcome those patterns of thought, patterns of behavior, lifestyle habits, healthy or unhealthy choices, self-destructive behaviors that have kept them in that rut. So we give them the opportunity to have their grievance or their trauma or whatever it is acknowledged. Like, Robert, I'm sorry that your brother-in-law has a history of extreme drug abuse. That's really got to be hard. I validated his concern. I addressed the fact that what he and his family have dealt with is very real and very impactful. So how are you all dealing with these challenges as they come up? Now we've started to turn. Do you see the difference in just jumping on the merry-go-round with him or deciding to take it into a different direction? Okay, so it's that careful, compassionate redirection that's going to, and it takes practice. It takes practice. You're going to need to expect disruptive behavior. Expect it. Why? Because the devil isn't dead yet. But firmly and gently redirect to the current topic while reinforcing positivity. Some examples include someone doubting the program will work for them. Someone having a know-it-all mindset. Oh, I've done all this before. Someone being openly hostile toward the program and or participants. Have you dealt with openly hostile individuals at church, Pastor? Have you dealt with individuals who are openly hostile? Really? Are you? Good for you. That's good. You know, sometimes it can be it can get a little challenging. You're probably one of the only pastors that I've ever asked that question to that says, no, not really. Everybody else is like, absolutely. And they've got like 3 or 4 examples that they can give right away.
I think the worst case we had here was somebody coming under the influence, and we had to simply escort them out.
Yeah.
That
Yeah. It,
This almost sounds like someone who is there, but they, against their will.
somebody that's there, but are they there or are they a plant of the enemy is more how I want to see. I mean, there's no such thing as there against their will. I guess if a husband drags a wife or a wife drags a kid or whatever, that might be against their will. But I mean, just expect that the enemy is going to try to infiltrate and disrupt. Expect it.
Somebody might sign up and then they are mad they did.
Right. Or they, are literally just specifically here as a disrupting force. We're actually seeing more and more of that at churches across the country. As the abortion issue rages, advocates and activists are showing up to Catholic churches and really causing a stink. And so, just expect it. Just know that, whenever that happens, you're like, yeah, she said this was going to happen. All right, do we want to stand up, take a stretch, and get a drink of water or something before we jump into the next phase here?
How long are we gonna go for one?
Yep. you have the nature of depression, current statistics, and what are the strategy for victory. Then you have your group discussion, and handouts include a water log for water intake, your personal scorecard, the Serenity bookmark, and then you have the CDC Nedley Ramirez report. Let me see what year, where is it? In 2014, if you jump over a few pages in your folder there, you'll see an analytic review from the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine. Doctors Neil Nedley and Francisco Ramirez published their joint hypothesis of identifying depression and its causes, which is the foundation of what Dr. Nedley did when he created his depression recovery program, where he categorized all of the symptoms of depression into categories that he calls the HIT categories. All of that comes from the DSM criteria used to diagnose any major depressive episode that indicates an individual must either have a depressed mood or loss of interest or pleasure in daily activities consistently for at least a 2-week period. So this is the published report that he and Dr. Ramirez submitted to and was published in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine back in 2014, okay? Dr. Nedley did the world of medical evangelism, if you will, health and wellness evangelism, a tremendous service when he published this piece, because it makes it so that we can then use these tools in our health and wellness evangelism because it is a published piece.
Also, I have the book, Depression, The Way Out, by Dr. Nedley, and since 2006, it's a very good book.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So the Freedom from Depression program utilizes information that Nedley and Ramirez put forth in their hypotheses here with the causal categories and all of those things. But then I also included work from Dr. Julian Malgosa, who is in Europe. He publishes for Sophiles Publishing, which is the Adventist publishing house in Europe, and as well as Dr. Dick Tibbetts, who's down at Florida Hospital, who does work with cardiology patients. And so we took information from this hypothetical paper here and simplified it down to the most basic of level without allowing the program to become technical, okay? We don't need to get into the technical weeds here because we're not trying to diagnose or treat even depression, if you will. The whole point of the Freedom from Depression program is to share with people the biblical health principles that will help them naturally overcome those things. Does that make sense? Okay. So we share with them the information that Nedley and Ramirez published. We give them a copy of the paper that was published in the American Journal of Lifestyle Medicine, and they're welcome to dive as deeply into that as they would like to. And then session number 2, we do talk about the causal categories of lifestyle habits, circadian rhythm, and nutrition. But then in session 4, we move into a different direction. The power of positive thinking and choosing forgiveness. Now, those are huge because within the lifestyle hits that Dr. Nedley talks about, one of those is developmental. And he basically does a hit and run on developmental hits in the hit categories. developmental causes for depression. And it's basically whatever happened in the past is in the past. You can't do anything about it, so we're not going to focus on it. Okay? And that just, it stuck with me in a big way. Because if I were to, in every single case, there has not been a single case of anybody that I have worked with either individually or in a group setting, and if that has come to me that doesn't have something developmental as a result, you know, as a major symptom of a depression or anxiety or, you know, feeding into their addictive behaviors or whatever it is. It has to be addressed. It can't just be, we can't worry about that. We can't do anything about that. So, we're going to focus on eating tofu, right? And no offense. And I've had conversations with Dr. Nedley, and we agree to disagree. But in talking with Dr. Dick Tibbetts at Florida Hospital, he's a cardiologist. And he was inspired, the Lord inspired him to try something. And he did an experiment where he had all of his cardiology patients not change their lifestyle at all. They were not, in order for them to participate in this experiment, they were not allowed to change their diet. They were not allowed to change their sleep patterns. They were not allowed to increase their hydration. They were supposed to keep everything basically stagnant. Keep everything that you do right where it is. But I want you to focus on forgiveness. I want you to write out that one thing that's just eating at you. Everybody has it. And so he had his patients write out their grievance, what he called a grievance story. We don't get into the grievance story aspect. But he had all of his patients write out their grievance story. And then he had them work to reframe that grievance story and engage in what I call active forgiveness. So that anytime they were reminded of that thing that was done to them or that thing that was said to them, they say a little prayer. Lord, I asked you for the ability to forgive that thing that I don't naturally have the ability to forgive. And even though I don't feel it, I trust you that you have given me that ability, and I don't have to be a prisoner to that anymore. Okay? And so every time the devil would come along, and this is of course not how Dr. Tibbetts addressed it with his patients, but every time the enemy comes along and pecks on your shoulder and said, hey, remember that one time your wife said that one thing that really just miffed you, you know? Instead of saying, yeah, she did. You're like, I appreciate that reminder. Lord, thank you that you gave me the ability to forgive that thing. Thank you that I don't have to be bitter about it anymore. I praise you for the grace that you've given not only my wife for that thing that she did, but also the grace that you give me for the things that I do against people. That's active forgiveness, okay? Every one of their numbers improved markedly. Every one of them. And they didn't change. They were still eating deep fried Twinkies. You ever had one? Don't knock it, my friend.
The analogy of that is that, you taking the rat poison, willing it to be on somebody else, but you're the one that's eating it because you're holding on to the...
100%.
You're the one that's dying, and they're not even aware that you're holding
I'm so mad at you, I'm going to hurt myself.
with anger.
That's what it is. And when in this, 100%, and when in this presentation, it talks about very specifically, think about that thing that you're angry about, that thing you've been holding on to for 66 years, that thing that you've been holding on to. And now, whenever you're reminded of that thing, how do you punish yourself over it? And you should see the light bulbs come on. People are like, oh, that is what I've been doing. My mom was an abusive alcoholic, and I've been punishing myself for it for all these years. I'm not going to do that anymore. Right? And so we take the foundation of what Nedley has done here with the causal categories of depression, and we've moved it away from the technical aspect. What is depression? How does the brain react and respond? What are the chemical reactions? How does dopamine react in the brain? Instead of taking that track, because he's got that on lock. I don't need to reinvent his wheel, right? What I've done is I've taken a little bit of that information, added it with the information that Dr. Julian Melgosa over in Europe has presented in his book called Healthy Mind, and added that even to the work that Dr. Dick Tibbetts did down in Florida Hospital, and created a complete package of practically applicable principles that people can relate to on a day-to-day, right? That's not just about taking in water. Of course, we have to feed our human machine with the fuel that it needs. Of course, we have to make sure that we're getting enough air and sunshine. And of course, we're going to go over the principles of New Start and how it affects the brain and all of that stuff. Sure. But we also are going to deal with the emotional and mental implications of bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness. And that's session number 4. Okay? Session number 5 is obeying nature's laws. And we talk about the importance of, just like if you want to be a happy, healthy, functioning member of society, everybody should follow by, the basic laws of society. And we're also going to implement those laws of health, and I went over those a little bit ago. And then session number 6 is living that lifestyle of hope. We talk about benevolent service. Now, what's the difference between volunteerism and benevolent service? Any ideas? I know it's like a pop quiz or something that you haven't studied yet. Obligation. It's assignment. It's obligation. It's duty bound. It's not, it doesn't benefit you really in any kind of emotional, spiritual way. Whereas when you're serving out of love, out of a genuine care and concern for someone other than you actually are the one who are gaining the greater benefit. Okay, I mean, it's a biblical principle. It's better to give than to receive. Like, we know that. And so we take those principles and show them how to practically apply that in a day-to-day. Turn over. So you have, tryptophan content. We talk about nutrient intake logs. And these are all updated in the workbook that hasn't arrived from the printer yet. But we have the personal questionnaire. Now, this goes back to the forgiveness session in session number 4 of the Freedom from Depression. And the questionnaire is this: what do I want my future to look like? Is prolonged anger or resentment likely to get me to that future? What kind of response to the hurt I suffered is most likely to help me attain my goal? What kind of response is likely to push it further away? What specific actions do I need to take right now to move me closer to my goals for the future? And if I choose to harbor resentment, what impact might that have on my future? Like, these are introspective questions that really inspire individuals. And I've had so many people come up to me regarding this questionnaire and tell me that they just didn't realize that they were choosing to be unhappy, that they were choosing to be angry. They were choosing to allow whatever, situation or circumstance it was to cause them, continued angst, anger, irritation, heartache, and all the above. The next page is is a letter of invitation to people who will fill out the community survey card. So as they fill out this card and they tell you the programs that they feel like are needed in the community, okay? As is appropriate, like if somebody puts on here addiction recovery and that's the only thing that they mark, right? Then just before, a couple of weeks before your addiction recovery program begins, the Freedom from Addiction program, then you would send this letter to that person specifically and personally addressed to them. Is there a person in your church who's a shut-in but has really excellent handwriting? Like, do some investigating. Find out if that person is willing to actively participate in this ministry, even though they're a complete shut-in and can't leave the house. That will give that person such a sense of ownership over the mission of the church and be such an encouragement to that individual. And you'll see more letters fly out of that person's house. I mean, the mailman's going to get mad. But it's okay because they're actively engaged in ministry, right? In recent weeks, representatives from Family Health and Education Resources were in Salem conducting community surveys. You were one of the many people who participated, and we would like to thank you for helping us better understand the needs of the residents of your community. First of all, did I just thank that person for helping me? So you employ the woman at the well philosophy of, hey, can I get a favor? Thanks to the work of our team of representatives and willing participants like yourself, Family Health and Education Resources is able to move forward with the community works projects that were indicated as most needed. An overwhelming majority of the residents who participated in the survey stated that they would most like to see depression and addiction recovery programs offered in the community. Beginning Tuesday, the first of these programs will begin, and we would like to invite you and anyone who would benefit from our Freedom from Addiction series. Within this series, participants will gain an understanding of the anatomy of addiction, and the means to overcome the challenges associated with addictive behavior. The epidemic of addiction has devastated our communities, and families are hurting as a result. The presentations of the Freedom from Addiction are designed to be of benefit to not only those struggling with addiction, but also those who have been striving to love and help an addict recover. This and all programs offered by Family Health and Education Resources are completely free to the public. Detailed information is on the enclosed flyer, and we are hopeful to see you there. Sincerely yours. Right? So it's a letter of invitation to individuals who fill out the survey card. Okay? And then we have the Freedom from Addiction program outline. Well, before I jump to that one, let me just share. Is it not in here? Oh, please. It is. It is not. Okay, so our registration form is here. I don't think it's in there. It might be on a previous page. I don't know what. Yeah, there's a registration form in there, but we want to get as much information about our participants as possible. So we have name, address, email, telephone, age, male, female. Are they single, never married, married, widowed, separated, divorced? What's their ethnic backgrounds? What is the highest level of education that was completed? What is their occupation? And are you working within your desired field? What difference does that make? I mean, yeah. Like if you have a PhD in psychology and you're a janitor, it's not real likely that you're going to be fulfilled, right? What is your religious preference, if any? Why do we need to know that? Well, I need to know what I'm dealing with, right? Because a Catholic mindset is very different from a Buddhist mindset, right? And a Buddhist mindset is very, very different from an atheistic mindset, right? Are you currently being treated by a physician or counselor for depression and anxiety? So when they answer yes, have you ever been diagnosed with any mental disorder? Yes. Are you currently on medication for depression or anxiety? Yes. So when you're stating, please talk to your doctor, please talk to your doctor, please talk to your doctor, over and over and over again, you're going to not stare at the person, but do make a little bit of an intentional eye contact. You know, like, I know you're under the care of a cardiologist. No deep fried Twinkies for you, right? But we want to get as much information as possible. And then we have, let me undo this paper clip here. Then we have the request to participate. Now, this is, I think this is also in there. Within your registration paperwork, the person at the registration table is going to have a registration form and 2 copies of this page right here, which is the request to participate, right? Now, it's 1 copy for them to take home and 1 copy for you to keep, right? And here's why we need to keep a copy. The last paragraph before the I have carefully read is, I understand that volunteers are not responsible for personal or group advice, comments, information, etc. provided by any other participants in the Freedom from Depression series. I understand that this Freedom from Depression series is not intended to take the place of my physician's care, but rather intended to supplement that care by providing lifestyle education. I understand that the information given through the Freedom from Depression series in no way establishes doctor-patient relationship with the presenters, volunteers, and the participants. I will not hold Freedom from Depression series volunteers liable for any personal harm or injury or acts of negligence. I take full responsibility in becoming informed about the process of my condition, right? So this basically says, you cannot sue me, right? That's what it says. We need the you cannot sue me form, right? Then your letter, here's the letter to your physician. And this is the one that I especially appreciate. Dear physician, your patient is participating in an educational seminar on preventing and overcoming depression and anxiety. And this will be specific to each series. So it could be addiction, it could be general health and wellness, lifestyle disease, diabetes, whatever it is. This seminar is based on the latest scientific research and peer-reviewed publications on the prevention and treatment of depression and anxiety through lifestyle. The program promotes a high-nutrient, high-fiber, low-fat, and natural sugars diet. Participants are taught the rationale and importance of regular exercise, healthy exposure to sunlight, fresh air, and a regular schedule for sleep and meals. During the course of the 6-week program, some participants have experienced significant changes in mood and energy and activity levels, as well as changes in weight. We insist participants consult with their healthcare professional before making any change to medications, as such changes should only be made under careful medical supervision. Please feel free to contact Howard with any questions or additional information at, right? So we are taking that extra step in making sure that the physician of our participants are notified of the programs that they're participating in. Fair enough? Okay. And then we've done group discussion. There we go. All right, so I can put this back together. know, it's a lot of information, I'm sorry. That wasn't loud and obnoxious at all. Sorry.
We expect disruption.
I mean, at least you have to expect it. Learn to expect the unexpected. All right, and then we have the program outline for the Freedom from Addiction. So we have the nature of addiction in session number 1, the current statistics, and strategy for victory. When I come back on the 21st and 22nd, I'm going to take you through, we're going to fly through it, but I'm going to take you through a couple of the presentations just so that you can see how they all flow, what is the overall format. You can look at the script and see how everything is structured. Session number 2 is we literally take the entirety of the depression program and cram it into one presentation. And this is that addiction is rooted in depression. I won't say never, because babies are born addicted. They're not depressed. They're just addicted. But, people as they grow older, they turn to self-medicating because they have a situation with either anxiety or depression, right? So we talk about the role of depression in developing addictions, treating the root cause, and then we call back to the depression program, because just because somebody came to the addiction program doesn't mean that they came to the depression one. But we want them to come back to the depression one because we need the entire cycle to be addressed, right? We talk about identity is everything, and this is vital. In Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, whatever Anonymous, I love that. It's anonymous. And you literally stand up and say, hi, my name is Julia and I'm an addict. Like, that's not anonymous. I've just told you my business. Right? Like, that's not anonymity. Is that the word? That's not what that is. But we, as Bible-believing Christians, we don't believe that we are identified by our sin. What does the scripture say? That we are crucified with Christ. Nevertheless, I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. And the life I now live, I live by the faith of the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. My identity is not in the old man of sin that has been crucified. My identity is in Christ. So we introduce the notion, the concept of an identity apart from and outside of ourselves that is and can be who we are. And that's a big concept. It's a big one, because one of the things in talking with people who were in active addiction, and I would hear it again and again and again and again, and the first time I heard it was from my sister. And she said, I just want to be somebody else. I don't like me very much. I'm like, no, you're pretty horrible. So why don't you be somebody else? Yeah, right. No, seriously, sis. You don't like you? You're terrible? Be somebody new. And that's what Jesus offers every single person. And that's what we introduce. So in the Freedom from Depression program, we talk about we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We talk about that we are created. Again and again, you have that golden thread, and you have creation and creator and fearfully and wonderfully made. And the thief cometh not but for to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I am come that they might have life and that they might have it more abundantly. Those are the things that we talk about. Not in a beating a dead horse kind of way, but in a very subtle, very inviting way. And then in the Freedom from Addiction, we get a little closer. Let me introduce you to Jesus. And he has promised that even though we're guilty of X, Y, and Z, and all the points in between, we have been offered the opportunity to be a new creation. And so identity is everything is session number 3, and that's only halfway through. And then session number 4 is learning to live again, building on a new foundation, establishing new habits of lifestyle, and setting yourself up for success. Let me see. Session number 5 is forgiveness and restoration, and that information from Dr. Dick Tibbetts. We take what Dr. Tibbetts did in the forgiving other people for what they've done, and then we bring it even closer. Now we're going to ask God to forgive us for what we've done, and we're also going to forgive us for what we've done. So we talk about the full and complete circle of forgiveness, forgiving other people, asking that we receive forgiveness, and then us extending it, right? So it takes everything and brings it just a little closer. And then maintenance and growth is session number 6. The journey continues, embracing the day-to-day. The best way to grow. And we talk about benevolent service, but instead of it just being volunteerism from a heart of love and compassion, we don't encourage people who come to the Freedom from Addiction program, we don't encourage them to go volunteer at a soup kitchen. We encourage them to go volunteer at an animal shelter. Why do you think that is? It's therapeutic, but what kind of therapy? 100%. 100%. Even a person at a soup kitchen will look you and judge you for track marks, for bruises, for whatever you got going on. But if you walk into an animal shelter and you go up to the most needy dog among them and you have a leash in your hand and you're going to go walk that dog doesn't care what your history is. All that dog knows is that you're there to show them the affection that they are desperate to receive. And then the next time you come in, that dog recognizes you, and what you see in the face of that animal is quite literally the compassion of Christ in the face of an abused and neglected animal. Excitement to see you. And that's what these people need. They need to see that. And guess what you cannot do? You cannot take advantage of a discarded dog. You can't manipulate that dog to get out of it what you think you're going to need. Because let me tell you, the mind of an addict has already figured out 20 ways from Sunday how to take advantage of Sister Sarah. But they're learning how to give and to receive something that is unconditional and something that the enemy has broken within them. And so we talk about the best way to grow.
Is there a potential connection between the number of homeless people you see with dogs?
Oh, absolutely.
It just struck me, and they're the cutest dogs, you know.
Of course. Devoted, loyal, loving, and 10 times more well-fed than the people are.
That's right.
Yeah, these little dogs are running around here a little chubby. Yeah. It's because if somebody buys a meal for the person, well, half that meal goes to Fido. Absolutely. And then using the rear view mirror. In a car, you have your mirrors for what purpose?
Look for obstacles, look for danger, look for safety.
But which is bigger, the front windshield or the rear view? Why? That's your focus. That's your focus. Right. So we're going to demonstrate to people and show them how to use the rear view effectively. Yes, you can see what's behind you. Yes, you can see there's something coming up here. Yes, you can see that you need to avoid some things on the periphery. But keep your focus on what's ahead of you. Be aware of your surroundings and what's behind you, but let's focus on what's ahead. Okay? And so that, you're going to crash, man. You're going to crash. I don't want to ride with a guy that's driving if that's the situation. I'm just going to be honest. Like, no, can I drive? I'll drive. It's fine. I'll drive. It's fine. In the Freedom from Addiction program, in our group discussion, during our group discussion times, we have something called the Your Journey journal entry. And at the end of every session, in their group discussion time, they get this journal entry. And this journal entry is designed to be a simple tool for those participating in the Freedom from Addiction series in any capacity. This is strictly for your personal use. No one will ever ask you to share from your journal entries. Period. Don't do it. It's a violation of trust. It truly is just an overstepping. Time is always given at the end of each group's discussion for those who would like to share, but you will never be asked or required to do so. If you want to share, if somebody wants to share what they've written either in last week's journal entry or how last week's journal entry maybe impacted their outlook or helped them to overcome a certain challenge or to adjust a behavior, then absolutely we offer the space for them to do that, but never, never, never ask. So my name, now this is for their personal use. So I would write, my name is Julia and I am 47 years old. I am attending the Freedom from Addiction series because I am the child of an addict. I am a former addict myself, and I am the mother of a child in active addiction. Addiction has impacted my life in the following ways. Birth to now. Addiction began impacting my life when I was born into a family of addicts. I feel powerless against the addictions that have impacted my life when my son calls me and is completely hysterical because he's on another methamphetamine ride. I'm hopeful to gain the following from the Freedom from Addiction series: insight into how to better mother my 27-year-old addicted son. And my personal thoughts, well, we could be here all day, right? One of the aspects, I think this is in number 2, you have the Freedom from Addiction Guidelines in Choosing an Accountability Partner. We encourage people not to get sponsors. Why don't we want sponsors? Yeah, but it's a different kind of accountability. And a sponsor has more of an authority connotation to it, don't you think? Whereas an accountability partner isn't someone of authority, but you have more of a personal connection to, right? You're not obligated to a sponsor, but you are personally, mentally, emotionally, and maybe even spiritually connected to an accountability partner. Okay? Timothy had who? And who did Paul have? Who did Paul have, Pastor? Right. No matter how mature we are, we still need someone. On the way to church this morning, I called my accountability partner. My accountability partner lives in Alabama and is one of the most important people in my life. I call my accountability partner when I'm angry. I call my accountability partner when I'm elated. I call my accountability partner when I'm just at my wit's end. And I call my accountability partner to share triumphs and trials. But I also know that my accountability partner, although that person is in their late 60s, that person also has an accountability partner above them. It's a cycle. Stone sharpens stone, and we're here to hold each other up. Aaron and Joshua held up Moses, right? Because you think he was tired, man. Can you imagine how sick and tired Moses was? Anyway. So characteristics for an accountability partner really quickly. Understands the struggles associated with addictive, compulsive, or obsessive behaviors. A bubble person will not likely be a very good accountability partner for somebody that's overcoming addiction. They don't get it. They can't fully empathize with where they've been. Now, is it necessary that the accountability partner is him or herself personally acquainted with personal addiction? No, but at least associated with and kind of gets what's going on, right? If a former addict living in freedom, if they're a former addict, they must be living in freedom at least 2 years, clean and sober. Why do you think that is? Well, now they're getting high together, man. I mean, come on. Listen, it's the truth. That person must demonstrate a mature faith in God and the principles of the Bible. Willing to hold you to account. Gently, but firmly. It's that iron glove or iron fist in a velvet glove concept, right? They must be trustworthy in holding sensitive information in confidence. Do we want the church rumor mill talking about what? No. They must be willing to be supportive and encouraging without seeking to force change. They must be a patient listener and honest in respectful feedback. They would have the ability to confront difficult issues with appropriate sensitivity and loving firmness in asking for accountability and keeping stated commitments. They have to share common interests and experiences, have time availability, and be able to set aside time scheduled each day to discuss and have prayer. And is the same sex. Well, why is that necessary? Come on, man. We don't need more problems. We got enough. And when you're talking about a person who's striving to overcome addictive behaviors, depression, even medical challenges, they're in a position of vulnerability. And we all know what human nature is when we're in a position of vulnerability. And wouldn't the devil just love that? Let's not give him any room to work. It has to be someone you respect and admire. Would it do me any good at all if I didn't have any respect for my accountability partner? Well, who cares what they say? I don't have any respect for that person. What difference does it make? That would be a complete waste of time. Some of the biblical principles to keep in mind as they relate to the concept of an accountability partner is that partners help one another in specific areas of need with prayer and by sharing inspirational verses or quotes each time they meet, either in person or on the phone. So if somebody approaches you and asks you to be an accountability partner, you have to take these things into consideration. It's not really something to be taken lightly, right? Are you willing to put in the work? Because it's work. It's active ministry. Like I asked yesterday during my sermon, what's your Christianity going to cost you this year? Well, it might cost you a little bit of time. Right, Gabriel? Did you have a thought? 2,000 pigs. Openly and honestly sharing personal thoughts, feelings, experiences encourages freedom and healing from past and current hurts and disappointments in ways that tend toward faith and strength, rather than a continuance in the cycle of self-loathing and adverse behaviors, right? It's the merry-go-round we want to avoid. Partners encourage each other in applying biblical principles that tend toward physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual wellness. They aid one another in applying those principles to the experiences of one another. According to Hebrews 10:24, let us consider one another to provoke unto love and to good works, right? And the study guides that we encourage and introduce in session 3 of the Freedom from Addiction series is an introduction to the booklet Steps to Christ, okay? And the study guide comes from the White Estates, and they're encouraged to embark on that journey. Not with our guidance, but independently. And we're going to come back to that. And then during the Freedom from Addiction series, we introduced them to the concept of prayer. What prayer looks like, how prayer can change things, how is it that you can talk to this invisible God that you may or may not have ever even thought about talking to. So we introduce prayer journaling as an option, and some of those prayer journal prompts are given to them in session number 4. Write a simple letter to God, write a letter of thanks, write a letter on behalf of someone you care about, claim the promises of God, write a letter asking for the ability to forgive, write a letter praying for the less fortunate, write a letter asking that God help you with a specific task or project. Make a list of your most immediate needs and review them each day, recording how they are met with specifics, and keep an ongoing record of these answered prayers. Write out your hopes and goals and ask that God would direct your path to fulfill His plans for your new life. Make a list of lifestyle changes you're making and ask God to bless those efforts. Write a letter asking for strength, protection, and victory from the King of the universe in the war being waged against you and the ones you love. Make an ongoing list of the promises you discover in your daily reading of the Psalms. Okay, so that's just a taste of what's in the Freedom from Addiction series. Any questions? I know it's a bunch. Yeah, come here and look. I'll show you. Seriously. Pastor, you're of no help. Thanks, though. There you go.
But it says welcome to this session in the 6-part series addressing the crisis of addiction. We'll meet each week for 6 weeks, and then a series will repeat after a few weeks break. It is our hope that this series of workshops will lead to positive and rewarding changes in your overall health, happiness, and well-being. We want for you to be able to live your life to an absolute fullest in this world of brokenness and suffering.
See, is that so hard? It's not bad. And see, so this is the slide that would be on the screen. This is what you would say, and then you click to the next slide. And then this is the slide, and this is the script, and this is the slide, and this is the script through the whole way. Yeah, so what you're going to do is you're going to spend time, if, say, you were going to be the presenter, right, for this cycle of the Freedom from Addiction series, you would have all of these, ideally, you would have all these printed there in a binder, and you would just go over them and prayerfully go over them, and then as you come to a thing, right, you would say, in my experience, I have found, and then you would write that in your notes so that during your presentation, you can share your personal experience with this specific slide or the information that's shared on it as well. So it doesn't require a PhD. It doesn't. If you can read, you can do this. 100%. We got you, man. Got it. So it's not, I know that it's a lot. It is a ton. Listen, this took 5.5 years to put together. Yeah, so this is a ton of research, a ton of information. But when you break it down session by session, all you have to focus on and worry about is one PowerPoint presentation at a time. And if you're the presenter, you're not going to be the group discussion facilitator. So if you have one presenter and 2 group discussion facilitators, they each have their group discussion guidelines. You don't even have to worry about what's in the group discussion because they've got that covered. So literally, it's a 5-inch binder with printed stuff and slides, and I haven't even included the 12 presentations from the Freedom from Worry, Guilt, and Fear in this. But it's one presentation at a time. One PowerPoint presentation at a time. And when you look at it that way, no matter how big the feast is, you can only take it one bite at a time. Right? So we're not a rehab. That's one thing that was brought up earlier by Robert. We're not a rehab. We're not where people are going to come in order to get clean. If people are actively working towards sobriety, we're definitely a toolkit in their quiver, 100%. But we're not the ones to tell them how to get clean off of drugs, how to get clean off of alcohol. It's not that phase of ministry. That's a different department. What we're here for is to help people put the pieces of a broken life back together, or sweep away those broken pieces and build something completely brand new. And yes, you're 100% correct. We can't help everybody. God can't even help everybody because not everybody will accept the help. But anybody who walks through the doors, regardless of what their background is, regardless of what their challenges are, their life experience, or anything else, when they come to the foot of the cross with a genuine longing, God will fill it. We don't do the work. We lift up Christ and let him do the work, right? It's the Lord that does it all. And so when, by God's grace, my vision, my ultimate vision is that we would walk into the kingdom after the second coming and the glorious resurrection, and there is just a sea of people who used to be junkies, who used to be drunks, who used to be just completely debilitated with depression and anxiety to the point that they couldn't even function. But because they came to the Salem church, or because they came to the Dallas church, or because they came to the Grundy County church, and they found Jesus there, and they told someone, and they told someone, and they told someone, that the Lord would be able to look at us and say, man, y'all really did a great job. That's all I want. And like I said, it's one presentation at a time. It's literally all you have to focus on. One prayer, one person, and one presentation at a time. Fair enough? All right, I could go on to the health and wellness one, but it's 1:45, so I'm not. We will pick back up there when we meet again, and I will share the actual presentations with you. I'll fly through a couple of those to show you again. Formatting, we'll do some practice runs, and I'll have the workbooks so that I can share those with you guys. Any questions, comments, concerns, anything else? Pastor, do you have anything?
No, the only thing I was wanting to discuss maybe the possibility of, if we are not able to get a large crowd on Sundays, if we not just stick to Saturdays.
Sure.
And that way we could, incorporate more people, because that's when people come. I think that the people, I'm looking at those that are here, with the exception of Robert, because he's the head elder.
He's mandated.
I'm retired. You're retired. Jorge is retired. These guys are retired. So we're looking at people that are not, overwhelmed with work throughout the week. They're not exhausted. The only day they have off, other than Saturday, other than being busy on Saturday, Sunday is the only day off.
I understand, yeah. It's a challenge.
Thinking that maybe we need to just stick.
We can stick to we can do Saturday, that's fine.
Now, next Saturday we have communion.
Not next Saturday, but the next time we meet, we can just stick to that Sabbath.
Saturday, and then we'll do another Saturday down the road.
When do we meet next time?
It's the 20,
Weeks from now.
yeah, it's the 21st.
So the 21st to do it on Saturday.
After do a potluck and do it.
Yeah, that's
I
our,
think we'll get more people that way.
yeah, that's already scheduled.
And I think that would be good, because if you're doing presentations on it, then everybody can actually
See it.
visually see
Oh,
it.
yeah.
Oh, so then the Sunday is not going to be, we're not going to do this.
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you're right, Pastor. I think that would be great.
Because I looked at who's here, and I'm thinking nobody here who's working full-time is here. And they're all, well, other than Robert, because you're the head elder. And
God bless you, Robert.
not even our other elders are here. So I'm thinking we need to be smart about this, because if we're going to incorporate this one, for the church to grab the vision, a good majority of them, those that are really interested in, we need to do it. We need to facilitate it.
And I think for me, just from my perspective, I know that there are some other people capable of presenting, and I think if they can see it,
Sure.
that will get quick buy-in.
Sure.
What we actually want. That should be our goal. So.
I'm trying to soften some.
So we'll readjust the schedule, and we'll pass out another
Update.
update of sheet, so that we can
Sure.
modify that, and we'll just stick to that. We'll have a potluck and then training, and then I think we'll proceed to go that way.
Perfect.
Get it done.
Awesome. Shall we have prayer?
So how many more sessions do we need if we don't?
If we do all day Sunday, that'll pretty much cover it as far as training is concerned. And then we do ongoing weekly, but that's via Zoom. So
All right. So we'll do then on the 21st, and then can we do another Saturday after that?
yeah,
Okay, so we can probably do it whenever we have the next call. But I need to look at the schedule.
okay, yeah. Look at the schedule.
Okay.
Sounds good. Awesome. You want to pray?